Hello and welcome to the SROA Board of Directors Town Hall meeting. This is the third in a series of quarterly town hall meetings presented by the SROA Board and brought to you by Sunriver U. I'm Gwen Gamble and I'm here from Sunriver U to help facilitate the meeting today. Today's panel includes Keith Caceres, James Lewis, and Keith Mobley. What's going to happen is we're going to have one topic presented. During that presentation, you are welcome to send a chat question through chat to Sunriver U. And at the end of the presentation for the topic, we'll address the questions that were sent during that presentation. The topics are going to be the North Pool or Members Pool. Then we'll do the question answer on that topic. Then we'll move on to the Mary Mcallen Park question answer series, and then telecommunications and a question answer series. Everybody will be muted except the presenters. So if you need to send a message, please use the chat feature. It's in the lower bar of your screen, and it looks like a little speech bubble, and you can type in your message. So questions come to us, and the first, there's a question coming up. Somebody's asking to unmute maybe? James Lewis is holding up a sign saying hi. Oh. He's waving and saying hi. So we're going to start today with Keith Caceres talking about the members pool. Keith.
Gwen, thank you so much for the introduction. We appreciate it. And thank you for all you do for Sunriver U. And thank you for being our moderator today. Welcome Sunriver owners. I'm Keith Caceres. I'm the Assistant General Manager here at Sunriver Owners Association. And I was, part of my task a few years ago was in reference to reaching out to owners to encourage you to become more educated on the North Pool, or now it's called the Members Pool. But we wanted to reach out to owners about what the plans were for the future use of the North Pool. And at that time in 2018, we put together a survey that went out to all owners in regards to the North Pool about what you would like to see at the facility in the future. And if and when we decided to make a change to the North Pool, whether you would like to see that facility go from a like-to-like replacement or go to a complete renovation. And so based on the survey results, we took that information along with, we also went out and visited Lake Oswego, Salem, and Eugene in person in 2018, because a lot of our owners do live in the Portland kind of metro corridor area, I-5 corridor, and we wanted to find out from owners in person as well what their thoughts are on the North Pool. So we gave owners the opportunity to provide likes and dislikes for the current facility and what they would like to see at the new facility. So with that data that was collected from the survey that was conducted, and also what happened in 2019 was that information was put together to create a vote to go out to all owners. And then you as owners got a chance to vote on whether you'd like to see the North Pool replaced like for like, or the North Pool to be replaced as a complete renovation project. And it was an overwhelming vote for complete renovation. And so based on the results of the actual vote, which was in August of 2019, we began construction in November of 2019 for demolition of the old existing facility. And part of the reason why this came about, to give you guys more background, is the facility was over 40 years old. It used to be owned by Sunriver Resort. The association picked it up in a land use trade about 15 years ago. At that time, the pool was failing. It was over 25 years old at that time. And for a long time, we had made adjustments to it to keep it going, but it was getting to the point where it was inefficient to operate and run in the manner that it was presented to us in. And we had a lot of work done every year on maintenance to upkeep the facility. So once you all as owners decided to renovate the project and complete renovation, we took those steps based on the recommendations you gave us during certain focus group meetings and also survey results of what you would like to see. And we implemented a plan, and we worked with our architects and our contractor to develop what you see there today at the member pool, which we call now, that used to be the North Pool. So to give you a little background of what is there now. So we took away a 5-lap lane pool and renovated into a 6-lane lap pool. We also removed a small wading pool and we replaced that with a leisure pool, kind of a oblong shaped leisure pool. And we added a new slide as well, which we did not have a slide up there. And we also did not have an outdoor spa, and we added an outdoor spa as well, based on feedback from you as owners, what you would like to see at that facility. In addition to that, we expanded the overall footprint of the Old North Pool by another third in size. So that gave us more room for additional seating, whether that be seating on a hard surface or more additional grass areas where owners could sit and relax and enjoy their time up there at the member pool itself. One key item that you all wanted to continue was allowing owners to bring in their own food and beverage. So we also expanded that offering by adding 2 additional built-in barbecues. So you could come up and grill out food for lunch or early evening before we closed. You could do that as well too. And the existing concrete and existing paver concrete patio area that was there in 2015, we expanded that and made that fit into the overall flow of the facility itself. And in what ended up happening this year, we opened on June 19th of this year. Our original goal was to open late fall, like kind of late summer of 2020. Obviously, with COVID happening, there was a lot of delays in construction. And so we were not able to get the project completed until the spring of 2021. So we opened on June 19th of this year, and we ran through Labor Day of September 7th. And that's typically the normal operating year we have, is from mid-June through Labor Day weekend at the member pool itself. But what was shown to us was the owners loved the project. They loved the facility, so much so that on average, most years we would have about 10,000 owners and guests utilize the facility over that summer period. This year we had over 16,000 owners take advantage of it. So that's an additional 6,000 owners and guests utilizing the facility. So it shows that the new facility was just built for you all. You came out and took advantage and actually utilized the facility, which is fantastic. In addition, we added a new welcome building as well. So we changed the location of where you enter the facility. And that welcome building has 2 year-round restrooms also, which is a really nice benefit because we were missing out on additional restrooms in that area, especially for tennis players next door to our nine-court tennis complex. That has been something people have been asking for a long time. So the great thing is we put that into play, and those will be there year-round access for owners and or those that are walking in or utilizing the pathways during the wintertime. They'll be able to access that facility. We also built a brand new pump room to house all the equipment for the North Pool, which is it's a feat in itself. There's a lot of equipment in that space to keep everything what you see out there running efficiently. It requires a lot of our staff time to monitor and maintain, but we do that to provide health and safety for you as owners. Looking forward to 2022, one thing we were hoping to do this year, we were hoping to have an owner kind of celebration and kickoff. We did have an open house weekend earlier this year, but we did not really have a chance to do a full-blown social event up at the North Pool, which we were planning on. Our goal is to do that for 2022. Hopefully early spring, we'll be able to pull that off. So owners will have a chance to kind of get excited again for the upcoming season. And our plan next year right now, budget-wise, is we plan to open that facility longer than we have in the past. As I mentioned before, typically it was mid-June through Labor Day. Now we're looking to expand that from Memorial Day weekend all the way through the end of September. The caveat there is if we have the staff to be able to facilitate that, but that is our goal. What we heard from you as owners, that was one of the feedback we heard from the original survey back in 2018 was, can we extend the hours of the facility, whether that be during the day itself or overall season length? So we've listened to you, and that is our plan for next year going forward. We want to provide more access for owners to be able to utilize this brand new, great facility that you helped us steer the direction of where it ended up being today. That is kind of the update for you all in the member pool. Gwen, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
There sure are.
Okay.
The first question is about the timing of the pool. Is there any way we can have it open longer into the season?
Well, that's what I just talked about. So normally we've been open from mid-June through Labor Day, and now hopefully going forward, our plan is Memorial Day, which is an additional 15 days, and then additional 30 days on the back end, which will get us all the way through September. So an additional 45 days compared to what owners have had access to in the past.
Okay. Another question is about the staffing, and the staffing is a real issue. how do we overcome staff shortages so we can have longer pool hours? Is it possible that we could go to no lifeguards similar to the Cove?
Great question. So at our Shark facility, it is not possible because that's considered a general use pool based on Deschutes County and state records. The North Pool, the member pool, is not considered a general use pool because it's a private facility. We could do that, yes. We have not done that in the past due to liability reasons and making sure, because we've never had a pool that's not been lifeguarded that SROA has owned or maintained. But yes, we are looking into those options. And that may be something where we look into for the shoulder seasons of not lifeguarding that facility. That's something that we are definitely working through with not only our insurance company, but just to make sure that staffing wise, we have the proper people in place that do need to be there to check people in, to make sure that they have all the emergency contacts they need if the situation does arise.
Okay,
But yes, we're looking at that option.
right. And are there any plans to put in any more umbrellas for shade?
Funny you should ask that. Yes, that is part of one of our capital requests for 2022. And we have mentioned that in passing to owners as well. We added 2 temporary shade structures back this August. But yes, we are looking at putting in more permanent shade for 2022.
Okay, I'm going to read this whole question because it has a nice compliment in it. The member pool is a wonderful facility. Can we please plan to budget for staff and operations for 7 days a week? And we would love it to not have a break in the middle of the week.
Well, trust us, we would too. So that is our goal. Yes, we want to get to 7-day-a-week operation next year. Hopefully, but the goal would be to get there by Memorial Day weekend with all our facilities. But at this point, some of that is to be determined with staffing, and that's where we have to make sure, and not only staffing for that facility, but overall recreation staffing in Sun River. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate staff to be able to provide that service back to owners for 7-day-a-week usage. We'd love to get back to that. That's where we have been in the past prior to 2020. We had that opportunity, so we would love to get back there again.
Okay, and this is a situational question here, that it seems like some non-owners are getting in without their owners. And I know that's a desk person's responsibility, but is there any better way to monitor that or post the rules?
I'd be pretty surprised that's happening. And the reason I say that, we have 2 different staff members working full time at that space, and they're all well educated on who's allowed access into the facility. So because the member pool is a little different than Shark, the member pool, even if you have a guest pass, that are part of those guest passes are given out for member preference card holders. Those guest passes, they have to be used by the member and their guest together at the same time. Whereas at Shark, a guest pass can be given out and people can just come in and use those without the member being there. However, the owner themselves or the member has to be present with the guests at the member pool.
Okay.
And we'll look into that, but I mean, just so you know, that's part of and our staff is trained to making sure that that does not happen.
Okay. Is there any concern about how to control rowdy guests at the pool if we didn't have lifeguards?
That's a great question, because we do have the challenge. If we did not lifeguard that facility, we would still need to have a lifeguard person monitoring the slide if we want to keep that open, because that is a requirement by the county and by the state. So we'd have to have one person there who could kind of be an overall monitor, and they could relay information back to our front desk staff, which when we could reach out to those that would handle that situation for us, whether it's our staff or we'd have to call in the police, for example. We would have that ability through communication link between the staff person out in the outside of the facility and the staff people inside the building itself.
Okay. So does anybody have any further questions?
Yes, I have one. I'm wondering if we can get some help from the audience on the recruitment of lifeguards and other people who are essential to the operations of the member pool.
And I will say, as a regular swimmer, I'm impressed by our residents who have stepped up to lifeguard. And it's always nice to thank our lifeguards and be kind to them, because they are very important to us in the operations. So yes.
Thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome. Would a good lifeguard compromise be not using lifeguards for lap swim?
Oh, so yeah. So basically what the suggestion there is, if we had lifeguards, could we only have lifeguards in recreation swim hours, is what it sounds like that person is asking. that is something we've also talked about as well. Lap swimmers are usually more proficient in their swimming skills. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be swimming laps. But it doesn't mean that things can't happen. So we would still need to have a staff person inside the welcome building there that if anything happened out in the field, we'd have to have a point of contact that we can immediately reach out to. But yes, that is a possibility as well to look at. Once again, this is new charted territory for us, not to be lifeguarding an aquatic facility. So that's something we're trying to work out all those details right now to make sure that we provide the longest season we can and provide quality customer service to owners.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all you've done to enhance the swimming experience for owners here in Sun River. Oh, that was another question that just came up. Sorry, just at the sign off. What's the real name of this pool?
So it's called the SROA member pool. So it used to be called North Pool, and we changed it to member pool to really show that the pool is designed for the members of the association.
Okay.
That's the reason for the name. So it's member pool is the name of it.
All right. So thank you so much. And we appreciate all that you've done to enhance our swimming here in Sun River.
Of course. I just want to say thank you to the owners for voting for a new renovated North Pool.
Well,
member pool.
You did a great job listening to us.
Thanks.
Moving on to Mary Mcallen Park. We have James Lewis, the Sun River Owners Association General Manager here to speak about Mary Mcallen Park, and he's holding up a sign. I cannot see it.
Oh, he's muted again.
He's muted again. Can you unmute yourself, James? There, you're on.
There you go. Thank you. Yes, I muted myself while Keith was speaking, so I didn't interrupt, and it wouldn't let me unmute myself. So thank you. With regard to Mary Mcallen Park, hope all of you know, is the owner's park. It is not open to visitors or guests or renters in Sun River. It is open to owners only. Now that becomes difficult because pedestrian foot access is available, but it's not advertised as being open to the public. And this past year, vehicular access, there's a new gate that went in there, basically to limit access to owners. So just wanted to get that out there, that you have a special place. It's along the river. It's really never been formally developed with a lot of amenities to attract the owners, but that's about to change. And that's based upon a lot of the input that we, the staff and the board, got from owners showing up at board meetings, showing up at or participating in the infrastructure and amenities master plan project that went on 2 years ago. So you may have seen some things that happened over the past 2 years. There's currently a petanque court that was constructed out there a few years ago. There's a new parking lot. As I stated, there's a new gate with controlled access. There is an existing pavilion out there that's an older pavilion. It's used by those owners that rent the park for various facilities. And there's short paved parking paths. There were old wood picnic tables that were placed on some gravel aggregate areas along the river. But if you've been out there this year, what you've seen some changes that have begun. Just this past year, this past summer in 2021, our public works staff, giving them kudos, replaced all of the aggregate pads, picnic table pads, and the wooden picnic tables with paver patios and concrete tables. And they're very happy about that because those tables don't move now. They don't have to replace them. Then we don't see too many people picking up concrete tables and trying to move those. So that's one amenity that makes it more user-friendly for folks that want to go down there, have a picnic by the river, or if they rent it for family reunion or the like. It's something that's very sturdy, very stable, and will be there for years. But moving forward to what are we going to do in the future? Well, our board heard this past year from a number of owners that said, we've ignored, SROA has ignored Mary Mcallen Park in the past. And so they were looking at what can we do for some improvements? Well, one thing that we really heard from the owners is that they want an extended pathway through Mary Mcallen Park along the river that loops back toward kind of where the parking area is, and that be a pedestrian only pathway. So that is slated to be constructed probably I'm not holding my breath for later this fall, but for early spring, late winter, early spring. And right now it will be an aggregate path. We're looking at paving that path. Originally we looked at paving it. We've gotten some pushback. Some folks want it to remain a compacted aggregate, which is ADA accessible and easier for walking. And other folks would like it to be paved. But again, because it's going to be pedestrian only, there's some thought going into whether it should be paved or not, because you know, the pavement will attract bicycles. Another item that's going to be constructed out there is a new pavilion, a new picnic pavilion, and it's going to have at the I think glee of many people, regular bathrooms, so we can get rid of the old porta potty that's been out there for years. And the design of that, if you know the pavilion and the restrooms that are constructed in the park out in front of Shark and adjacent to the amphitheater, it's going to be that exact same design. So that is intended to be constructed again, starting late winter, early spring, so that it will be available when the weather gets nice and when we start really getting a lot of interest in folks renting the park and using pavilions. That typically starts in mid-May. So those are the two big remaining elements: the pathway, the extended pathway, about 3/4 of a mile, and the pavilion with restrooms. Now, currently, where we are in the process is this is a state scenic waterway, and it's all under the jurisdiction of Deschutes County. So two things that we're doing is we had to work with state parks to get approval from them on the designs of what we're doing. And we've gotten that verification that it's okay. And we're currently working with Deschutes County Planning Department on the necessary land use permits from them to approve our site plan for the pathway and for the pavilion. I think one important thing to say, though, is that when all the conversation came before our board, pressing them for improvements to Mary Mcallen Park, our board had a great debate, and they really, looked at the owners and said, "You're right. We do a lot of amenities in Sun River that can be used by the general public. Shark, for example, is, as Keith was saying, is a general use pool. The pathways, in as much as many people would like them just to be used by owners and visitors of Sun River, there's many of the even local public come to use those pathways. But the board really took to heart the comments from those owners coming to the board meeting and those emails that they got to say, we want to do some improvements in Mary Mcallen Park, like I talked about. So what they did this past year is they reappropriated funds. So it's actually it's all budgeted. It's going to carry over into next year. So there are funds, existing reserve funds that can be used for this construction. And so it's not going to, as Keith was saying, it's not going to take any owner's vote to any assessment or the like. It's all going to be able to be done within existing funds that SROA has dedicated to recreation facilities. That's pretty much it right now. There's, the existing development, what we did this year, and what we're proposing to do next year. And maybe what I should say is another element is we look to Mary Mcallen Park in the future. What can be done in the future is SROA in 2022 can be conducting a parks master plan. And that parks master plan is really going to look at all of Sun River, all of our parks, all of our recreation amenities, to see, how they all tie together. Rather than looking at each individual park and say, hey, why don't we construct, or why don't we build, or why don't we change, whatever amenity is at that park? How about we look at our park system holistically? Where do we need new tennis courts? Where do we need new pickleball courts? Where do we need pathway extensions? Do we need some smaller playgrounds in certain areas? That are too far for people to walk or bike to. So as part of that parks master plan, and that's something that the owners will get to partake in and participate in this year, we're also going to be looking at Mary Mcallen Park with that as well, to see what might need to be done in the future. So that's kind of it for now. What you can look forward to, Mary Mcallen Park, late winter and early spring.
Okay, so here's some questions that have come up.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, now they're coming up fast. The path being ADA accessible, bikes only or pedestrian only, paving it? Is there any, where are we with what the surface of the path will be?
Well, initially, part of the construction requires us to excavate out about 6 to 8 inches deep, probably about 8 inches deep, 10 feet wide, the whole pathway alignment. That will be bordered, and then it will be filled with crushed aggregate, like quarter minus, if for those of you that know what that is, on the bottom, and then very fine compacted aggregate on the top of there. And in many parks that you see just across the nation, I was just at some last week, they utilize that to maintain kind of a softer surface, a softer feel within a natural park. But again, when that's compacted, it's ADA accessible. And again, you know, we've been kind of pulled in two different directions. One was to pave the path, and one was to not pave the path, to kind of leave it softer in Mary McAllen Park, which is pretty much a natural park along the river. So, but initially, we're going to surface it with the rock. That would have to be done anyway, even if we were going to pave. So that you will see done, and then we have some time to think about before we get to the spring, the need to pave it. And
Okay.
again, part of the pushback on paving it is that if you pave it, it will invite bicycles in an area that's really intended to be more low key and pedestrian only.
Yeah. Okay. This is a question. The person put in the word shark, but I think they mean Mary McAllen Park. The pavilion at Mary McAllen Park, does it have running water and a sink for cleaning up?
It does not. It does not. There's no running water, no sink for cleaning up. Hence the reason we don't have a permanent bathroom out there now either. Excuse me. That pavilion will stay. What's going to happen is the fireplace is going to be removed from that because fire and Sun River really don't mix, open fires. So it's not been really usable for a while, but it will be physically removed. As part of the new pavilion, with creating permanent bathrooms, there will be a sink, cleaning area, running water to facilitate parties and use.
Okay. Will there be water fountains as you're getting a drink?
Yeah. Sorry, lots of talking. Not really sure about a water fountain yet, but that's a good idea. I think as we get into construction of the pavilion, there are add-ons like that we can do. Something like that, for example, I mean, it comes at a cost, but it's a minor cost in comparison to the whole structure. Something like that could be added to the outside near the restroom area.
Okay. Is there any chance of having a fishing pier that would allow for ADA access to fishing?
You know, that's something that was brought up. It's not scheduled right now to be constructed as part of the near-term improvements that we were looking at. Somebody just brought that up to me 2 weeks ago. Again, for kids or for ADA access. That is something just permitting wise, when you're building a structure out over the river, that's something that I think we'd want to take on as a separate project from the permitting that we're doing right now for the pavilion and the pathway. Just being very honest with everybody, when you start building structures in wetlands and out over the river, the permitting processes, the hoops you go through are considerably more than what we're doing, say, upland from the river. So I think it's something that definitely, as we do the parks master plan, if that's something that folks really have a desire to do, that's something we could take a look at and potentially fund it and permit it.
Okay. Another question is regarding the access to the gate code is kind of an inefficient system if you're here on the weekend and can't, well, you have to call SROA or the Shark and ask somebody, and sometimes they know the code and sometimes they don't. Is there a better way to make that gate code known?
You know, we've been thinking about that. The challenge there, though, is if you make it too public, then it defeats the purpose of this having or being an owners only park. It will, you know, we have on any given weekend in the summer, we have upwards of 15 to 20,000 visitors in Sun River, and they're all looking for somewhere to go. And so we've been racking our brains about that because, you know, aside from your card that you get when you participate in the members preference program, there is a code. So I'm open for any good idea that anybody has that can help us, give access to owners, but prevent access to non-owners.
Yeah, and there is a suggestion here that we could text the code to authorized phone numbers, but I see Keith Casares has something to say here.
Yep,
Let
go ahead.
Keith talk.
Real quickly, just wanted to say, this past year, we enabled the member preference card holders. It's built into the swipe card now, the member preference card. You can swipe to get in access to Mayor Mcallen Park, so you don't need to type in the code anymore. So that is available to all, 7,000 plus member preference card holders. But those that don't have their card on them at the time, they would still need to type in the code. And like you said, they would either need to call Monday through Friday, the SROA administrative office, or call the Shark Facility Member Services on the weekend to get that code. But by having the card swipe access, which we've not had in the past, has been a big help for access to that facility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith. All right, moving on to further questions, sort of about boats. There's two questions here regarding boats. One is between Mary McAllen Park and the marina, is there any opportunity to build a kind of housing facility that members could house canoes and kayaks? And then the other question is about signage on the river telling people not to pull out at the park and how far it is to the marina.
Okay, two things. One, first is with regard to like boat or canoe kayak storage. We do have our 2 owners storage parks for RVs, and we do have spaces in there for canoes and kayaks. But I think that's a good question. As we get more and more activity at our boat launch and the river becomes more and more popular with people canoeing and kayaking, we do see a need. We have a waiting list for our owners RV storage park. I don't know how many of those are for canoe and kayak trailers, but again, it's something that I think can be evaluated as part of our parks master plan. That if we could, it's a capital expense. If it rises to the top, if we have that much of a need, it's something that I could foresee being constructed if we were going to do it near the boat launch, our existing boat launch in the parking lot there. Again, it's, how does it rise to the top in our priorities, recreation?
Okay, thank you.
The second part of that again had to do with
Signage on the river, because so many people pull out at Mary McAllen. I don't know why, but just knowing how much further to the marina.
It's interesting because most people put in at the Harper Bridge area, and we worked with Deschutes County this year to install some signs there. We have distances to takeouts, on the Forest Service side. We let folks know that that our boat launch and then the Sun River Resort Marina are private marinas, and they either need to be an owner or make arrangements to be able to take out there, and to try to message that. Also, we have at Cardinal Landing Bridge and at Mary McAllen Park, we've had signs in the past that tell folks there's no no boat launch or takeout at those locations. But one thing that folks need to realize is, aside from Mary McAllen Park, a lot of the area along the river that borders Sun River, all of Sun River, is common area. Much of that is common area, and that is allowed to be accessed by owners of Sun River. And actually, our board looked at earlier this year, instituting a new rule that limited boat take-in or any floating device, whether it's inner tubes or the like, put in or take out from the common area in Sun River. And we got some input from some of the owners, and we also went back to our consolidated plan and our rules and regulations. The common area is intended to be enjoyed by all owners of Sun River. There is no prohibition from people walking or utilizing the common area adjacent to the river. It was actually intended so those folks that don't live near the river can gain access to the river. What we try to do in those instances is mitigate or limit any adverse impacts to the riparian area along the river. So what we do is we will put signs in areas that are severely impacted to try to get folks to not go in and out of those areas so that we can restore those areas. And generally, they're pretty much two areas. One is at Mary Mcallen Park and one is by Cardinal Landing Bridge. We saw a decrease in that happening this year. Our board did adopt a rule stating that there's no loading or unloading of watercraft, meaning all sorts of watercraft from roads in Sun River. So it severely limited the put in and take out at Mary Mcallen and also at Cardinal Landing Bridge.
Okay, thank you. And was there reference to like a community committee to help with planning future plans at the park? And if so, how do people who are interested get on that committee?
You know, I think I was referring to the Parks Master Plan. That's something that we're looking at budgeting for 2022. So we're in the middle of our budget season. We're on a calendar year budget cycle. So we're looking at funding that for this coming 2022 fiscal year. As part of that Parks Master Plan, I know that we're going to have a consultant involved to hear all of the ideas and kind of help us formulate it into a final plan that will take us out a period of years of what improvements will happen when and how those will be funded. But as part of every group or every project like that, Sun River has had a task force that has been appointed by our board to participate. And an example is right now we're in the middle of working with a consultant to revise our design manual and our design review process that hadn't been done in 35 years. And we have a task force of 35 people. So I would say keep watching the SROA webpage, stay in touch you can work directly with me to find out when that project's going to go forward, because we will solicit owner participants on that task force.
Okay, and the final question that I have waiting is considering a dog park. Have we looked at putting in a fenced dog park, be it Mary Mcallen or another location?
Going back 2 years ago, when Sun River did the infrastructure and amenities master plan, that really looked at and tried to prioritize, what types of infrastructure, whether it's tunnels or road improvements or pathway improvements or amenities, which are pickleball courts and a lot of the recreation amenities, what owners wanted, what they wanted to see first. And what was not ever on that list, but there was a lot of input into that project, was the need for a dog park. And so a major element that we've talked about as staff with that Parks Master Plan that we're looking at this year is how and when or where would a dog park be incorporated into Sun River. So that's going to be a major discussion point. What came out of that infrastructure and amenities master plan report was kind of this little, antecedent. You really need to look at creating a dog park when you do a Parks Master Plan. So it's high on the priority list to examine when we do the Parks Master Plan.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other than that, I think we're ready to move on to telecommunications, and we're welcoming Keith Mobley, the Sun River Owners Association president, and Keith Caceres and James Lewis will stay on for that portion. And please type your questions as they come and we will ask all of them. I'm just going to say that we have had some questions that go back to the pool. And at the end of it all, we'll go back and address any lingering questions or issues. Okay.
And real quick, Keith and I we have an outline. So we're going to kind of go through a presentation and we're going to present different portions of this among the three of us.
Thank you.
So,
And it's my turn.
Yep, you're on.
All right, I am on. I was off for a time. I have switched to my iPhone in order to continue the communication from Prosser, Washington, where we are in our RV and spent the morning kayaking on the Columbia. telecommunications has always been important to me, beginning from my days in the Navy when I was a communications officer. And one of my experiences was working with the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was aboard the flagship with the admiral who would have led the invasion of Cuba had that become necessary. And from that time forward, I've paid a lot of attention to our ability to communicate effectively. And it's always good to have a backup iPhone, and AT&T turns out to be just that. For Sun River, I have completed a 3-year term and ran again and was reelected. Thank you very much. Primarily because I wanted to pursue this interest in telecommunications that I've had for quite a few years. Telecommunications at Sun River have been generally good. My view is that they can be better, should be better, and can be, in fact, will be once the Telecommunications Task Force has completed its work. That task force was formed in January of 2019, and it included originally 4 board members, Gerhard Bienen, Brad Skinner, immediate past president, Jim Pfister, former board member, and myself. So we were the board members. We also had 5 of our management people from SROA. That was James Lewis, Keith Casares, Joe Healy, Mark Smith, and Brad Olson. You probably recognize all of those names. They are the people with primary responsibility for making Sun River work, and in the case of Brad Olson, making our IT system work. We also have other people on the committee who are Sun River owners. John Salzer, a name I'm sure known to many of you. Dick Lubke, who's also active in other organizations and has a background in telecommunications. Doug Palin, also active in telecommunications. And Brian Kotonimi, who is the IT representative for the Sun River Resort. So it's a good-sized group. We've been meeting very regularly and under the leadership of Gerhard Bienen, whose knowledge in many things, including telecommunications, is quite extraordinary, as is his ability to pull us together, hold a good, solid meeting, short time, but always moving toward a result. The result that we are looking for is better telecommunications for Sun River in the form of having fiber to the premises, fiber to the homes and businesses in Sun River. That isn't the case everywhere now. There is some fiber, and it's being regularly installed by our current provider, which is TDS Bend Broadband, a provider that was located in Bend originally, but now has headquarters in Wisconsin. They've been at it in Sun River since 2012. We have a contract with them that was a 10-year contract and expires in June 2022. And it was in anticipation of that date that we decided it would be good to explore the opportunities that may exist for improving our telecommunications in Sun River. Essential service, increasingly so with what's happened in the last couple of years. I think it has underscored, the pandemic has underscored how important it is to have good broadband communications. Let's see. Our negotiations have been extensive with Bend Broadband. Those have been led by James, who has done, in my estimation, an exemplary job. And while I'm passing plaudits, I want to thank the Owners Enrichment Committee, Sun River U, and particularly Gwen Campbell for putting all this together and making it possible for us to communicate on a regular and thorough basis on the issues that we hope are of great interest to our owners. So, James, would you like to talk about the negotiations you engaged in with Ben
Sure.
Broadband, TDS?
Yeah. Yeah, as you noted, we have an existing contract that goes back to 2012 with Ben Broadband. That contract, as many of you probably know, Ben Broadband was bought out by TDS as a major telecommunications corporation out of Wisconsin. During that time, and part of the reason why we have this task force and we're having these conversations is many owners expressed that they did not have quality service, the service they desired, or they did not have good customer service when trying to express their lack of quality of service to Ben Broadband. So again, this existing contract we have with Ben Broadband, it's very similar to a franchise agreement that a city would have, but we are not a city. So this agreement that we have is currently a mutual, or a exclusive agreement with Ben Broadband. We are not allowed to promote any other business. We can allow them to come into Sun River, but we cannot promote any other telecommunications, internet, or broadband provider in Sun River. Currently, Ben Broadband, about 85% of the owners of the properties are connected to Ben Broadband. So they kind of serve a little bit as a monopoly for telecommunications in Sun River. That's why we're doing this exploration, is based upon some of the customer service complaints, the availability of a variety of services or not having that ability through Ben Broadband. We are exploring what other options. One of those options, though, is to renegotiate with Ben Broadband a new contractual agreement. Right now, I can put out, one of the elements that we're looking at is that they would extend fiber optic service throughout Sun River to each and every home and each and every business, to every property. And for those of you who have fiber optic system service, maybe in another home or a business, the quality of fiber optics is vastly better than the existing coaxial service that we have in Sun River. So that has been part of the negotiation with Ben Broadband, is for them to construct fiber optic to the home. Then subsequently, we have other provisions regarding customer service and other elements that would increase the service to owners and residents in Sun River for a period of time that we would enter into that agreement with. But again, that's kind of on hold. We're still working with them while we're still exploring options for Sun River having fiber, or owning its own system, or constructing its own system to provide fiber optic to the home. And so again, that's something that I think I can let Keith talk to a little bit more. He's had some experience in other communities doing that. So Keith, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you, James. Yeah, James is referencing my work with Wasco County, the Dalles. Back in 2001, we were in the midst of a real economic problem. The aluminum plant closed down. There was a need to find another use for property along the Columbia River. We decided that we would try to build a fiber loop around the Dalles and see what happened. We got a lot of help from the state legislature, from Congress, and we were able to complete it. And once we had it complete, there was an announcement about something called Project O2. Turns out it was Google wanting to build their first data center. And they did build it. They've been in operation now since about 2006 and are on an application for a fifth data center that has made a great deal of difference for that community. Part of what we wanted to do in the intergovernmental agency that was formed with the Dalles and Wasco County was expand fiber south into the county. And we finally were able to do that about 3 years ago now in Mcallen, another community on the Deschutes River. Mcallen at that time had a population of about 430 people and no resources really to devote to buying, building fiber. So we figured out economic development strategies, found some money, got it started, eventually wound up by getting about $1 million for Mcallen. and found a partner, actually two partners, who were interested in providing service, and they contributed another $1 million. Now that community has fiber to the premises that is owned by the city, owned by the community. I've been in touch with some of my former clients who are using the service, most recently with a geotechnical engineer whose office is based in Portland and 3 other cities, I guess, around Washington and Oregon. And he loves it. He's paying $40 a month for symmetrical service, that is up and download speeds the same, about 90 to 100 megabits per second. And he is paying $40 a month. And if he wanted to, he could have phone service for an additional 10 a month. He had one problem with the router. He complained. He had a new one installed the next day. The service has been terrific. And obviously the price is quite a lot better than it had been under a sole provider. We call in the trade the incumbent local exchange carrier, the monopoly provider, very similar to what we have in Sun River with Ben Broadband, and now owned by TDS. They have about 85% of the users in Sun River. There are other providers there, Verizon, CenturyLink, and Bentel, but the bulk of the work is being done there. Ben Broadband is an unregulated utility. And if they go ahead and build fiber to the premises, as they are telling us they will, there is no guarantee that the price that will be paid is going to be anywhere close to what it is currently. It might be, but it might not be. My recommendation, my advocacy, is to try to do in Sun River what we did in Moffitt, and that is have a community-owned system, fiber to the premises, that is open and available to providers who are expert in delivering service, but often prefer to work, which is not surprising, as a monopoly or as an operator in a very limited competition situation. So if we have competition, I think the prices will be better and the quality of service is likely going to be better as well. That has worked out in both the Dalles and most particularly now, most recently in Moffitt. So that's where I have been standing, but I've also been saying, and without reservation, that when the work of this telecommunications task force is complete, and we've made a recommendation to the board, the result will be vastly improved telecommunications for Sun River. My hope is that it is less expensive and better quality than it would be perhaps with a monopoly provider, which is problematic from my perspective. So that is the spiel that I have been making, perhaps too strongly, but quite regularly with the telecommunications task force. Back to you, James.
Yeah, I can further what we're doing to get to the next step to explore that. Again, I think, either way, what this task force and I think SROA board is looking at doing is making sure that there's fiber optics to the home in Sun River, be it through Ben Broadband TDS or be it with our own system. And, I think, again, what Keith is advocating for is rather than having just one option, that being Ben Broadband and being at the mercy of their service, their price, et cetera, is that if we own our own system, meaning we own the infrastructure, we own the conduit in the ground, we are able to open that up to multiple providers. So if there are multiple providers that you as an owner or resident can choose from, typically, multiple options drives increased service offerings, better service quality, and a reduced price. Just think about anything that a consumer likes or needs in this world. When there's competition, you have an advantage. So one thing that we're doing though, because that would come at a cost to Sunriver owners, is to build our own system, but hopefully at an advantage, reduce costs on the back end. But what we're doing is we've recently put out a request for proposal for an engineering feasibility analysis, and we've received some proposals back. What that engineering feasibility analysis would do is it would provide us with an overall, a conceptual design, but an overall number that we could then take to, or an overall design that we could then take to some contractors to get us a number, a dollar amount that would cost to construct this system in Sunriver. Because again, if we work with Ben Broadband, they may do it at their cost, but then they're not gonna do it for free. They're gonna make up that money on the back end. For SROA, if we construct the system, that's going to be at our cost, but we will then own the system. We will have control. So again, that's what that proposal, a request for proposal, and the proposals we're getting back right now is so we can better ascertain the cost, so that we can let all of you, the owners, know here's the cost of doing it ourselves, and here's an option from Ben Broadband, so we can present that to you and be very transparent. So on that note, though, I think Keith Caceres, if you're still there. Keith Caceres.
Okay, we're working at getting him unmuted so
Okay.
he can share.
Because I think,
Okay, there he is.
Okay.
because I think what's really important as a part of this, Keith, that you worked on with the task force, is the owner survey that we did.
Yeah.
We did a survey to try to, so everything that Keith Mobley and I talked about, we did a survey to try to get information from the owners as to what did you want us to explore, what were your problems, what do you want in the future? So Keith K, go take it away.
Sure, I will. Yes, thank you, James. So in July of 2020, we conducted a survey. We sent it out through our email system to our owners that we have registered on email. And we had about over 1,100 respondents to the survey. And it was a fairly brief survey, but it was all dedicated to telecommunications, to what your current situation is with your telecommunications, and what your future needs are, and or what your desires would be, and how to improve the current system you're utilizing that you're being provided to you now. So with that survey, we got a lot of great responses from owners. And to follow up with what Keith Mobley just mentioned, that yes, about 85% of the current owners in Sunriver utilize Ben Broadband as their primary internet source for connectivity in Sunriver. However, in reference to whether their download and upload speeds meet the needs, there was a mixed review of whether that was the case or not. Some of that depends on what part of the Sunriver community you're in. There's some older infrastructure versus newer infrastructure, which affects its current telecommunication speed through coax cable. The advantage of fiber cable is it eliminates those variances. And when you have fiber directly to the home, you'll have a constant feed and a constant upload and download speed as well. So you'll have much better connectivity. One of the items that came up also was in reference to how many users would be interested in, if there was a fiber to the home option that was not currently through Ben Broadband, would you be interested in that as an option? And would you be willing to pay in potential assessment for that? And so there was a large group of owners, about 68% said they would be willing to pay an assessment if it was for better quality service and better reliability, and also faster network speeds. And then there was a question asked of, what price range would you spend for that type of service? And then that varied based on the number of owners that were willing to say, yes, they want to be assessed, but then also at what level would they be willing to spend? And the majority of people on average was somewhere between the $600 to $1,000 range is what they were saying they would be willing to spend for better quality service and better speed based on the survey results itself that came in. But the great thing was, out of the owner base we had in the email database, having 1,100 people, that's a good representation of the ownership at large when you do surveys. That's plenty of people to be able to get a good assessment of the users in Sunriver, the current system, and then what they're looking forward to also with better communications in the future and better connectivity. One thing I do want to add, in addition to that, in July and August of 2020, we also conducted 3 separate town halls with owners as well, similar to what we're doing today, specifically tied to telecommunications. And it was designed to, one of the town halls was based for owners that live here full time. One was based for owners that are non-resident owners that may live Portland, Seattle, elsewhere that are down here on occasion. And then the other town hall was directed primarily towards owners who rent their home for nightly short-term rentals. And the reason we wanted to get the feedback from owners in all three of those categories is because every owner here in Sun River is equal in regards to their monthly maintenance fee they pay to the association. And so we wanted to treat everyone equally, but there's different needs of each owner in Sun River. So that was an important factor as well, to make sure we heard from all ownership base and types in Sun River, to make sure we had quality information that we could share back to the task force and eventually help us plan decisions going forward, which eventually would come back to the owners for them to decide upon.
Okay, we've had a lot of questions come in. Are you folks ready to address some questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So if the SROA builds our own fiber system, will businesses, including the resort, pay their fair share, or are the homeowners going to be underwriting this for business benefit?
Well, I'll jump in. If after all of the work that's being done by the task force, if the suggestion is to build our own system, again, I referred to, we have a feasibility analysis that's looking at what would the cost of that be. We would come up with, what is the cost and what would the assessment need to be? That would go to all owners. So each owner in Sun River, commercial, the resort, or individual homeowners are responsible for an assessment.
Okay, so that's part of the question then, is the resort counts as an owner?
Yeah, the resort has some fiber already connected to their property. So from via Ben Broadband, but again, they are looking for, they're not receiving that quality service either. So again, that's something, an assessment would go to all owners. We don't have the ability to back out any owners out of the boat.
Okay. So if the SROA builds, let's see, what's the timeline? When do you think the SROA will be ready to put a vote to the owners whether we want to invest in this infrastructure? Are we looking at a month, a year, 3 years? We know that you've mentioned the 2022 cutoff for the current contract.
Well, there's a 2022 end to the current contract, but there's an automatic 5-year extension that Ben Broadband has built into that. So, and we have no control again. So essentially they have until 2027 to operate their service in Sun River as is, if with the coaxial system. Again, I talked about the request for proposal. We just got some proposals back for that feasibility analysis. We're looking at entering into a contract probably in the next month or so with one of those engineering companies. It'll probably be by the end of the year that we'll have that feasibility analysis done. So not trying to give you a firm date, but it'll be sometime in the first quarter of 2022 that we would have a recommendation from the task force and to the board, and the board would be looking to make a decision.
All right.
2027 is the.
But 2027 is the earliest that we would be released from Ben Broadband?
Unless they want to stop providing service, but nothing prevents SROA from constructing its own system. We have the ability to construct our own infrastructure and get ready to provide service at the end of 2027.
So we could start building before then?
Correct, because it's going to, for what it's worth, I mean, it's going to take some time to get, if we decided to build our own system, it will take some time to get some formal, complete construction drawings for how the service is going to be provided to every property in Sun River. And so it'll take time to get that done. We would also need to have a vote on the assessment that would, even prior to that, a vote on the assessment in 2022. We would then also need to work with a contractor. So the soonest that I could see construction even beginning would be 2023. And then there would be a construction period. I mean, there are 4,200 houses and 64 miles of road in Sun River. There's going to be a construction period that might take a couple years before it's all completed. So, I mean, we'd be approaching 2025, 2026 anyway, before we finish the whole system.
Okay, thank you. So somebody has mentioned that they see a lot of work going on around in Sun River, and there was an assumption that that was fiber cabling going in. So if it's not, what is going on?
It's Mid-State Electric. Mid-State Electric, there's a lot of, in Sun River, there's, because Sun River is over 50 years old now. Mid-State Electric is the electric provider, and they are replacing, they have I think the last meeting we had with them was kind of a 15-year plan to replace electric wiring and cables in Sun River. And so that's when you see the conduit going in. There's a lot of direct bury wires in Sun River where they just take the wire and bury it a couple feet under the ground. So they're kind of moving into, like, you know, this century, and they're putting that in conduit. So that's what you're seeing being installed.
Okay,
now.
that's good to clarify.
Yes.
Just so you know, this comment has been made. We should make every effort to develop our own community system. And that's coming through. A lot of timeline questions have come in, which I think you've addressed. What about cellular service? Is this in any way connected, or anything that you can add to enhancing the cellular service up here?
You know, that's not my forte on, on that right there. I'm just being very honest with you.
Mhm.
We've been focusing on the broadband internet service to the house. What I can tell you, though, is they're through negotiations, and very much just recently with other providers such as Verizon. They're looking at doing more facilities. I won't say antennas or cell towers, because sometimes that you know, people want to know, where's the cell tower going. There's a lot of methods that they do now to do low key antennas to provide additional service in Sun River. So that's separate from this project.
Okay, so as I scan through the questions here, so many really address the timeline and the cost. And I want to make sure that people feel like that information's been addressed, because you're waiting for a task force to complete like the estimate of the cost and the plan, so we can then vote on it and then get things going.
Correct. And again, like I said, is that we should have an estimate of the cost early 2022. We're like I said, we're working with, we're looking to let a contract with an engineering company in the very near future that would create that feasibility analysis that would lead us to a very, very accurate cost. And again, the timeline for construction, even if we were working with Ben Broadband, they have a 3-year timeline for a build out. It's just an extensive build out. And people may wonder, you know, why does it take so long to build that out? Because in Sun River, unlike communities, even if you go south of Sun River in the Three Rivers area, all of that fiber line can be overhead. It can be on poles and then overheaded to people's houses. In Sun River, there are no overhead lines, no overhead wires, and compounding that is there's a lot of rock. So if you want to construct fiber in Sun River, you are either digging or boring through a lot of rock to put it underground.
Okay, totally different question on the same topic. If Sun River owns the infrastructure for the fiber optic, or for the internet service, basically, who do you call when you have trouble?
Well, that's something we've been exploring that too, is, you know, does SROA take on its own service cable company, so to speak? You know, like you see the Ben Broadband trucks come now, do we take that on ourselves? Or do we maintain kind of the administrative element of that? And do we contract out the actual construction or the service part of that? So we would still be the owner, but rather than buying our own trucks and hiring our own people, we contract that out so that the service is provided by others, but we still maintain the ownership and administrative element of that. So that's something that would be worked out. That's something, you know, would need to be built into the cost that we come forward to the owners with.
All right. If any homeowners are out there listening and you feel like your questions have not been addressed, please resend them to me. Oh, there comes one. Can cellular 5G be a lower cost alternative to fiber?
Fiber, fiber is the most reliable. Fiber is a 50+ year investment and provides the most reliable service. The interesting thing is, even with the projections, the discussions we've had among our task force and the research that we've done, even with things like Starlink that has come out. I don't know if all of you know what Starlink is, but Elon Musk putting thousands of satellites into space that provides internet service in the middle of nowhere. Those have limitations. So anything that you're doing that is not fiber, it will have some limitations. So fiber is the most has the longest lifespan and the most practicality for long-term service.
Great, thank you. Thank you for all that information. It's very comprehensive and so much to swallow at one time. This has been a great town hall meeting, and thank you. Oh, we're getting a thank you for hosting it. But there's one more question. We have to go back to the swimming pool question. So I think that's going to be a matter of unmuting Keith and letting him. So thank you so much for all your input, James. And we'll get Keith here to answer a pool question. So Keith, welcome back.
Thank you.
Switch channels to swimming pool.
Sure.
The questions come up about the slide at the pool. There is a height restriction, a height requirement for the slide. Is this a county or state requirement that we must follow? There are playground slides with similar slope that younger children and smaller children can easily go down. I'm beginning to wonder if this is the slide at Shark versus the slide at the owner's pool. Is there a height requirement at the owner's pool?
Yes, so there's a height restriction, height requirement. They have to meet a certain height, which is 42 inches at the member pool. And then at Shark, just to answer that as well, the body slide is 42 inches, but the tube slide, which you slide on the raft tube going down, is 48 inches. And that is put in by the manufacturer itself of the slide based on the slope and the length of the slide and the run out at the bottom of the slide, whether you're dropping into the pool or dropping into its own trough like you do at member pool. And it all goes back to risk management and liability. But it's also what the state and what the county requires is you have to maintain and meet the requirements of the manufacturer of that device, which would be the slide in this case.
Okay.
So you have to meet their standards.
Well, I think that clearly answers that. Thank you very much for being willing to go back.
Sure.
All right. Well, I wish you all a lovely evening. We're going to wrap up this town hall. We look forward to the next one. And I just want to remind people to check the Sun River U page for future events and check the SROA owners page to learn about updates and ongoing things. You don't have to wait for the Sun River scene. Okay. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you.